Basra Hashem, today's daf is Masechta Baba Basra Daf Kuf Mem Tes, and we will begin on Daf Kuf Mem Ches Amid Beis, about, let's call it like 7 lines from the bottom. Yibaylahu. Let us discuss that we're discussing over here. We're discussing over here. Hi, Alan. We just began. Basically, we're discussing over here of Shchiv Merah, a guy on his deathbed. And when he's on his deathbed, there are 2 points that over here. One point is that as soon as he says a verbal a statement, so after he dies, even if no kinyan was made, we follow through on what he said. For example, if he said all my assets, and here's the key, he has to say all my assets will go to somebody so and so. So put it this way, he doesn't have to say that, but if he says my assets go to so and so, and then he dies, we have to follow suit on giving the assets to so and so, even though that so and so did not make a kinyan, did not make any acquisition. Now, the one other point that we learned from a very important point is that if the Shchiv Merah gets better, so then he gets his assets back, and he could get it back if only on condition that he gave away his entire estate. He gifted his entire estate, and even if the person that he gifted it to made a kinyan and made an acquisition, if he gets better, then it's clear that the whole reason why he was giving everything away because he thought he would die. But now that it turns out that he did not die, he gets it back. However, let's say he was on his deathbed and gave half his estate away, and then he got better. So then he doesn't get it back, because if the other person, the recipient, made a kinyan, he keeps it. Why? Because the fact that he didn't give everything away when he was on his deathbed showed that he really intended to give this as a gift, like a matnas bari, like as if he was a healthy person. And as a healthy person, if you give a gift to somebody and the guy acquires it, so you can't take it back. So if you only give half your estate away and then he gets better, the Shchiv Merah does not get a refund, only if he gives everything away. So that was the rules that we learned in the Mishnah. So now let us begin the Gemara. Ibaylahu, we're on the Kuf Mem Chesam and Beis, 7 lines from the bottom, 8 lines. Ibaylahu, the question was, Higdish Kol Nechasav, a guy, instead of gifting it away to a stranger, he made everything hegdish. All his possessions go to the temple. Va'amad, and then he got better. Mahu, would he get it back also? Why? Mi amrinin, kol legabe hegdish, when he, on his deathbed, made everything hegdish, gamar umakne, he committed himself 100% to give it to hegdish. And he probably, in the back of his mind, said, no matter what, I want hegdish to keep it. Or maybe, kol legabe nafshe legama makne, if it concerned himself, he didn't 100% give it away. In other words, maybe had he known that he would get better and somehow have a miraculous recovery, he would not have given it all to Hegdish. So we would give it back to him. So the question is, does Hegdish keep it if he got better or not? What happens if Hifker called Nechasav? A man made his entire possessions, he's on his deathbed, and he's made his entire possessions Hefker. He was mafkarid. So, Mahu, what's the din? Mi amrin, and do we say, Kivan the aflanim kashim gomer makne, since he gave it all away to anybody who wants to get it, right? So he's 100% committed in giving it away. So even if he got better, there's no refund over here. Maybe when it comes to himself, if he would get better, he, in the back of his mind, would have never committed 100% to give it all away. So perhaps if he got better in that case, we'd give it back to him. What happens? A man gave all his entire property to poor people, and then obviously he got better. Does he get it back? What's the din? Do we say tzedakah vade migma gama umakni? When it comes to charity, of course, he 100% wanted to give it away, and there's no refund over here, even if he got better. Or Dilma, or maybe you say, Kol legabe nafshe lo gamo makni. When it comes to himself, if he would have known that he would have gotten better, lo gamo makni, he didn't completely in his mind, 100% give it over and give it away. He wants to get a refund if he would get healthier and have a miraculous recovery. Teku, so the Gemara remains this unresolved. Okay, now we know that for sure that if he gave everything away to a friend or to a stranger, right? So then that is a gift, and that after he dies, right? After he dies, then it goes to that person. What happens if he said Yitol, let that person take it? He didn't say Tnu, give it to him, or he used the word Yiska, let him merit my assets. Yachzik, let him come and take possession of my assets. V'yikno, or let him acquire my assets. So he used not the gift language. A guy's on his deathbed, maybe he's struggling for words. What he should be saying is, give my assets to so-and-so. Instead, he used language that implies that he's selling it to somebody or he's loaning it to somebody. He used the wrong language. Says the Gemara, Kula Lashim Atanahi. That's a gift. And really, it's a type of synonym that could be also be used as a gift if you don't know English, if you don't know language so well, that those would work. But Masnita Tana, in the Brisa we learned, Af Yachsim Yiris, if you said let him come and inherit it, Biroi Liarshai, and there's a type of person that you're gifting it to is somebody who potentially could inherit. Rabbi Yochanan Bebreiki, it's like Rabbi Yochanan Bebreiki, which you could say that let one of my sons inherit everything. Rabbi Yochanan Bebreiki is the one that said that it could work. You can tell that you can disinherit all your kids and inherit one kid. So bequeath the one kid. So if you say that language, that would work also. Even though you're not gifting that person, you're bequeathing it to your one son versus the other sons, that could also work. Because matna shchivmara, although we call it a gift, it's also basically you're bequeathing it, because as long as the shchivmara is still on his deathbed and did not die, the gift doesn't take effect. It takes effect after he dies. So it's somewhat borders on a gift, but it's also like a bequeathal of someone who wants to give an inheritance to somebody who could inherit that person. Ibailahu. So the question is, we go to Kuf Mem Tes Samad Aleph. Ibailahu. The question is, Yahana Behen Mahu. If a guy says, I want this person to enjoy my property, then they have a kulim atana kamar. Did he mean to say that this should be, it's like a gift? I want him to enjoy it. Dilma, maybe he said, he meant, I want him to enjoy it, but I don't want to give it to him. Let's say he has an apartment in Florida. He's on his deathbed and he says that I want so-and-so to enjoy my property in Florida. Did he mean to give it to him as a gift? Or did he mean that really the property belongs to the children, but they have to let so-and-so be able to use the apartment every now and then? So what did he mean on his deathbed? If he says, I want him to be seen with my property, maho. Yamay behen, let him stand on my property, maho. Yishahin behen, let him lean on my property, maybe for sustenance or to rely that if he has no place to go, he can come to my property, maho. In all these cases, the guy on his deathbed, what did he mean? Did he mean that he wants to give that person a gift? Or did he mean that really the property should belong to his kids, but they have to allow that person to be able to enjoy the property every now and then, or rely on it, or be able to use it whenever he wants? Teku, the Gemara remains this question unresolved. So the question is, what do people mean when they're on their deathbed? Gemara says like this, Ibailahu, the question was like this, Mochar kol nechosav, a man sold all his assets right before he died on his deathbed. He's a shchivmara, right? Maho, what would be the din if he got better? He sold everything, and now he's on his deathbed, and then they told him, "You miraculously your illness disappeared. Can he get it called back the sale?" Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav. Rav Yehuda said in the Reim Rav, "Im Amad Eina Chayzer." If he gets better, he cannot get a refund. And the reason he can't get a refund is because he kept the money. Unlike a matna shchiv mera, is where you give everything away and you're left with zero. So it's obvious that when you get better, you didn't mean to leave yourself penniless, so you get the whole thing back. But here, he sold everything. And so he had the money of whatever he sold. So if he gets better, he doesn't get a refund. It was a regular transaction, a regular business transaction. That's what Rav Yehuda Amarav said sometimes. V'zimnen, and sometimes Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav in Omad Choizer. Then, if he does get better, he does get a refund. So the question is, why? I mean, what does Rav hold? Does he get a refund or does he not get it? Can he refund the money and get his possessions back or not? What's the din? So v'loy pligi, it's not a machlokes. Rav didn't contradict himself. Ha the isnai l'zuzah b'anai. If he did not use the money, he just took the money and piled it up right next to his bed. So then, if he gets better and has a miraculous recovery, then the sale is invalid. He could just return the money and get everything back. Why? Because he didn't use the money. And it's obviously he was thinking he's going to die, and he doesn't, maybe he's too cheap to give it all away. So he sold it, and that was that. But now that he got better, so the whole sale was based on him dying. Now he's not going to die. He can recall the sale. If he paid a debt right away when he got the money, he paid somebody else outstanding debt. So then it's clear that he really wanted the sale to go through no matter what, because he wanted to die without having outstanding creditors. So therefore, even if he would get better and somehow he gets money, he cannot invalidate the sale. Now the Gemara asks a new question. Ibailahu. The question was, Shchiv Mara, guy's on his deathbed. Shahoida. He said, I admit that my property belongs to, my assets all belong to such and such a person, to so and so. Now, he's basically saying, I don't own anything. It all belongs to my mother-in-law, whatever he said. So now, why did he say such a thing? Did he mean to give it all to that person? Right, because that's not the way you gift something. So you gift something. You say, "I'm giving it to somebody," but he's saying, "I don't even own it. It belongs to so and so." So that's not really a gift. So why would he say such a thing? Because he doesn't want everybody to think, around him that his kids are rich. So he said, "Oh, these assets, I agree that they belong to so and so. They're not mine. They belong to so and so." So it could be he's actually gifting it to so-and-so, or could be he's not really gifting it to so-and-so, he's just lying. And he's lying so that people should not mistake his kids as being rich, so he says it belongs to so-and-so. My father used to say, I don't own anything, it belongs to your mother. But what is that? So this is what the Gemara's question. The guy is on his deathbed and saying everything belongs to so-and-so. Did he mean to give it to so-and-so? Or he was just lying and trying to say that it belongs to that person so that he doesn't want the people to think that his kids are rich. So Tana Shema, come in here. The Isser Giyora, there was this man called Isser. Very interesting that this Isser had relations with the daughter of the great Amira Shmuel, and they had a child. So while she was a goy, he had a relationship with the daughter of Shmuel. And they had a very good son called Rav Mari. And then Isser married the daughter of Shmuel and became a ger. Well, became a ger first and then married. So, but now Isser Yura may have been wealthy. Let's say he had 12,000 zuzim, 12,000 coins in the house of Rava. He trusted Rava to be the bank. Okay, so Rava was the bank for Isser. Now, one thing you should know, that Rav Mari his son, was not really his son. Why is it not really his son? It's his biological son, but Isser had him when he was a goy, and then Isser became a ger, and a ger that becomes a Jew, it's as if he's reborn. So he is not even related to his own son. So Rav Mari, his son, the pregnancy was not in a holy state. When Isser had relations with his mother Rachel, he was a goy. But when Rav Mari was born, already that at that time Isser became a Jew. Ubei Rav Haba and Rav Mari was a yeshiva boy. Amar Rava said, Rava did not want to give the money back to Isser, and actually he hoped that Isser would die, and Isser would die, and Rav Mari and Rava would be able to keep the assets like any ger that dies. You get to keep the assets. So the Gemara says that Rava wanted to keep it. Now, why did Rava want to keep it? I don't know. Maybe he had an emergency campaign that he needed to keep this money. So he didn't want Rav Mari to get it. So he thought to himself, Rav Mari, the son of Isser, how is he going to ever get a hold of this money? Isser is about to die. He's a Shchid Marah, and Rav Mari, his son, is not won't be able to get this money. Why? Because Rav is holding on to that money. Rav Mari is not really his son. Why? Because he was the son of a goy, of a ger. So Ibirusha, if Rav Mari wants to inherit this money that I'm holding on to, La Bar Yerushahi. It's not a Yerusha. He can't inherit it. He can't inherit it. Because he's not really his halachic son. If Isser would give him as a matna shchivara ki Yerusha shavinu rabbanim. The gift of a shchivara has same dinim like somebody who could give a Yerusha. In other words, only a person that could bequeath to somebody can actually give a gift to somebody else. If a person can give a Yerusha to someone, Isa can gift it to somebody else. A guy who can never bequeath anything to anybody, the whole halacha of matna shchimera does not apply to a ger. That's what Rav is saying, because he cannot give anything to Yerusha. Even Mashiach, if Rav Mari, if Isser wants to Moishech, to Mashiach or Hagbah on the money, to give it to his son, Leis Negabe. It's not him. I'm holding on to the money. If he wants to do some funny transaction between him, like a barter exchange, let's say Isser would give Ramari would give Isser a penny, a pen, and Isser would commit himself to give the money that's by Rava to Rav Mari, his son. Chalipin does not work with coins. Agav karka les le'ara. If he wants to be coined agav karka, that he wants to give him land and also the money along with it, he's not. Isser has no money. Isser owns no property. If there's a concept of mamat shloshten, that if Isser and Rav Mari and Rava get together, and Rav Isser says to Rava, give the money that you're holding on to, give it to my son Rav Mari, then it automatically Rava has to follow through. But Rava said that if he calls me to come to this meeting, lo yazilna, I'm not going to go. So basically, Rava worked out in his whole mind that Isser, who's on his deathbed, has no way of transferring the money that's in his possession. Rava's holding on to that money. There's no way to transfer it to his son Rav Mari. So the Gemara concludes, Maskav la Rav Ika Braid Rav Ami Amai. Rav Ika asked Rava, why can't he transfer to Rav Mari? Let Isser say on his deathbed, I admit that this money belongs to my son Rav Mari. Basically, he's like, I don't know how it works, but somehow Rav Mari would be able to own that money. It's not a gift. It's more of like an agreement that I never had intention to own this money. It really was always Rav Mari's money. I was like a custodial account for him. And it works. When Isser heard that this idea could work, b'moida, so he said it. He said this word, amoida, that this money belongs to my son. And it worked. And Rava gave the money over to Rav Mari, his son, after Isser died. But Rava was so upset that Rav Ika came up with this idea. You're teaching people how to claim against me, and you're causing me a loss. And basically, Rava intended to keep that money. Like I explained, he wanted to keep that money. Maybe he had an emergency campaign that he needed to have the money. And now that he learned this new din, that a guy on his deathbed, instead of gifting something to someone, has another way to do it. He could say, I admit this money doesn't belong to me. You have to follow through on that. And that's how Isser transferred the money to his biological but not halachic son called Rav Mari. Now we go to the finish up the Gemara here. The Gemara on Amid Beis now says, Shir karka kolshu, matanose keyemes. If a guy on his deathbed gave everything away, but left over a piece of land for himself, then if he gets better, right, then there's no backsies. Because if he really meant to give everything away, and because he thought he was going to die, why didn't he give everything away? The fact that he left some property by himself to keep, to hold on to, really meant that he was gifting everything like a normal, with the normal das, that even if he would get better, the gift should stay, it should be sustained. So that's what the Mishnah said. Shir karka kolsha, if a guy, a shchivara, left, that's what the Mishnah says this. If he left over a piece of land that he didn't give away on his deathbed, and then he gets better, matanosa keyemes, his gift sustains and he gets no refund. But kama kolshu, how much should he be able to keep for himself? How little of a piece of land does he have to keep? Amar Yehuda Marav, karka kedei parnasosai. You have to have a piece of land that would be able to supply him, I don't know for how long, but to be able to give him sustenance maybe for a couple of months. So it's not like a drop of land, like an inch of land, but like a normal piece of land where you can grow food on that land and you could sustain yourself for a little bit, maybe a few months. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Amma, it doesn't have to be even land. He left over movable objects. Let's say he left over a pair of cufflinks, which he could sell. That's also not giving everything away. So therefore, that also is included in the Mishnah. Although the question is, the Mishnah said you have to leave over a drop of land. So first of all, Amar Abzera made a comment. It says, Kama machavne shmaitz d'savi. These people, Rav and Rabbi Yirmiyah, made a lot of sense. Because why when he gave everything away, he kept this piece of land? Because he now has realized that if I'm going to live another couple of months, I have where to live on. I have a little piece of land. So same thing, when you left over a pair of cufflinks or whatever, a watch, you're figuring, the guy on the deathbed figuring that even if I live a couple of months, I have movable objects that I could sell and I still have support. So he really meant to give the gift. So even if he gets totally healthy, there's no backsies. That's what he said. How great these intelligent rabbis are. Karka tamamai. What's the reason why land you keep? Because he thought, if I get better, samachalai, I have what to live on. So even if he left over movable objects, he figures to himself, if I get better, samachalai, I have what to live on. So he really intended to give the gift. So even if he gets better, he doesn't get the assets that he gifted away in return to him. Maskif lo Rav Yosef asked, my kavanta. How could you say that they're spot on? These rabbis are spot on. They're really not spot on because the Mishnah seems to say something else. Mandama metaltalin, the one that said that metaltalin, that even if a guy left over movable objects, well, our Mishnah says karkatanan. Our Mishnah says if you leave over land. Manda ama kadei panasasa, it has to be a piece of land that you could support yourself on. Our Mishnah says kol shehutanan, any type of land left over. So how could you say that these rabbis were precise in their comment about this? So one more minute, and we'll say like this. Omalei Baya, Rabbi asked Rav Yosef, how could you ask such a question? That our Mishnah said karka, if you leave over a piece of land. Our Mishnah meant to say only karka is called a shear, a leftover, but not movable objects. Wait a second. In Mishnayos, it's not always that simple. Lots of times Mishnayos will say karka, and it also means land. The Gemara says, karka dafka, wherever Mishnah will say the word karka, it means land. But now we learned in the Mishnah, a person writes all his possessions belong to his slave. Yatsu ben Chayrin, the slave goes free because the slave is like land. The slave is part of his possessions, and he's gifting it all to his slave. So the slave automatically goes free. Shir karka kosher, if he left over a piece of land, he says, I'm leaving over a piece of land, but I'm giving everything to my slave. Lo yatsu ben Chayrin, the slave does not go free because a slave, even though it's a movable object, but a slave also is like a piece of land. The Avdoi Eved is like karka in the Chumash. And therefore, maybe when he said, I'm leaving over a piece of land, he meant to say, I'm leaving over this Eved that I'm not letting go free. And he's just kidding around with this slave. Rab Shimon says, the Rab Shimon argues and he says, the slave always goes free until he said, I'm giving everything away except 1% of my assets. I'm not giving it away to my slave. Because maybe he considers a slave as 1% of his assets. So half a minute here. The bottom line is that if he left over movable item, if he said, I am leaving over, I'm giving everything to my slave except a couple of movable objects, I'm not giving to my slave, the slave will not go free. Even though the Mishnah says he had to have left over piece of land, but Rab Lazar said it doesn't mean pieces of land; it means movable objects. So therefore, say the same thing in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah that says if a man leaves over land, it also means a movable object. So what's Rabbi Yosef all questioning that our Mishnah was very precise in meaning that it only if you leave over land, not metaltalin. Answers the Gemara, the Mishnah Peah, you could say is lav dafka. It didn't mean precise because hasab bedinhu delaylis nekaka didn't have to list the word land because va'idi detani reisha it had to say the word land because the reisha is always talking about land. Kiva imet karka kolshu chayeves bepeya b'kurim v'lichtev alem pizuv lichnas imam nechas shem lachayis b'keser shtav chazaka b'shmu hachi ketani karka. The Mishnah Peah is following along a pattern. The previous Mishnah talked about land, and that previous Mishnah could only talk about land. So the next Mishnah talks about land, but it could also mean the Taltalim. But our Mishnah that says Shir Karka Kolshu, if it meant Metaltalim, then why didn't it say Shir Karka or Metaltalim? Then that's not called a Matna Shchimera. So since our Mishnah did not say it, Rabbi Yosef was questioning if leaving over Metaltalim would take it away from being a Matna Shchimera. Okay, we'll stop right over here.
Wow, thank you.
Okay.
Where